Welcome everyone to another Dolphin Communication Project deep dive webinar. Tonight we are joined by Savanna Duda. She is a recent graduate with her master's degree from Nova Southeastern University. She also did her undergrad there, where she looked at mom-calf contact. That paper, you'll find the citation is on the DCP website. Just go to the publications page under the Knowledge Hub, Research Hub. I should have checked. It is not open access, so we're not allowed to just post the PDF. But if you message us or email us, we are allowed to individually email PDFs to you. So if you don't have access to the paper and you're interested in reading it, feel free to give us a shout. Savanna has been with DCP since 2021, so time is flying. We're very happy to have her as part of the crew. And for her master's, she looked at patterns in dolphin calf initiated contact exchanges, or as we've taken to calling it in advance of this talk, touchy-feely baby dolphins, which is a little more fun. But we're going to get into the nitty-gritty with Savanna this evening. So if you are joining live, please remember to submit your questions to the chat. And if you are listening to a recording, thank you very much. We hope you enjoy it. And feel free to message us with questions if you come up with anything. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Savanna.
Thank you, Cal, for that introduction. All right, go ahead and share my screen. So as Cal said, my name is Savanna Duda. I just finished my master's degree, and today I'll be talking about patterns in dolphin calf initiated contacts, aka touchy-feely baby dolphins. Oh, there we go. First, we'll start with a little bit of background on dolphin social behavior. So bottlenose dolphins live in fission-fusion societies made up of both short-term and long-term relationships. Now, we can start understanding these relationships a bit better by looking at many different social behaviors, including tactile exchanges or physical contact between individuals, and that is what I'll be focusing on for this presentation. Now, contacts, as I'll refer to those tactile exchanges for the rest of the presentation, are frequently shared in dolphin societies and very important for building relationships between pairs or dyads. For instance, increased rubbing contacts and positive reactions to those contact interactions between a dolphin dyad indicates a higher compatibility or ease for that relationship. Now, pectoral fin contacts specifically have also been identified as a tool to build and maintain relationships between these individuals. Now, these behaviors have to start developing somewhere, and we start with the calf. So bottlenose dolphin calves are dependent on their mother for the first 2 to 4 years of life. And in that first year especially, the mother-calf pair tends to stay in very close proximity with each other. Now, one of the ways they're able to maintain that proximity is through pair swim positions. Now, in the first few months of life, the echelon position, pictured here on the left, is primarily observed. This position offers a hydrodynamic benefit to the calf, meaning the calf can expend less energy to swim with the mother. At around 3 months of age, we see a shift to primarily using the infant position, pictured here on the left with the calf below the mother. Now, this position also offers hydrodynamic benefit to the calf, but not as much as echelon, which is why it is seen later after some physical development from the calf. Additionally, active maternal behaviors, such as herding, intervention, and proximity maintenance behaviors from the mother tend to be most prevalent in that first year and help maintain that proximity. Now, after that first year, we see a decrease in these behaviors, which allow for more freedom for the calf to interact with others. Now, as calves begin these interactions, their first associates are typically dependent on the mother, as the mother's associations or her friends and her avoidances are socially transferred to her calf. Now, these relationships built as a calf likely form the foundation of their social network for life, but the associations that they may gain, the demographic of who they might be from the mother can vary based on the population. So for example, in Port Stephens, Australia, we see mothers with similar age calves associating more together, whereas in Shark Bay, Australia, mothers and calves, both as a dyad when they're together and independently, preferred to associate associate with calves of both sexes and juvenile females, but not other mothers. Now, with these social networks, calves will begin initiating contacts, that very important social behavior. Now, with pectoral fin contact specifically, Dudzinski et al. Looked at how calves varied initiations based on kin availability and found that female calves initiate pectoral fin contacts less with their mother when young kin are available, whereas males were more likely to initiate with mom regardless of kin availability. Now, since this study did not assess age differences, these behaviors may change as the pre-weaned calf ages. Dudzinski et al. Also identified that the pectoral fin was used less with the mother overall compared to how calves used it with others, given the importance that we know and the strength of the mother-calf bond. Instead, my previous study from 2024 identified that calves used different body parts to contact mom. Our younger C1 calves use their dorsal fin more, and older calves use the body, so like their melon and their side rather than appendages, so those fins. However, this study did not have a large enough sample size to look at sex differences, and the literature overall is lacking on sex differences for calves initiating contact with others. Which leads to this current study. So the overarching research question is, do bottlenose dolphin pre-wean calves initiate contacts differently based on calf age and sex and by the receiver age and sex? The major predictions for this question are that calves will initiate more contact as they age. Younger calves will initiate more with the body, such as the melon and the side again, than with fins, so their pectoral fin or dorsal fin. And finally, older calves will initiate more with the pectoral fin to same age sex peers. And we expect this to be stronger for males than females. Next, for the methodology, starting with data collection, it was all collected at the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences, or RIMS, that's located on Bailey's Key on the northwest side of Roatan, Honduras. Now, the study population is housed in this 8,000 meter squared main lagoon area, and all data was collected in this area. Now, the mobile video acoustic device, or MVA, as pictured here on the right with Kathleen, was used to collect video data with a front-facing GoPro point that you can see on top that provides a wider frame of video, and all video used for this study came from that GoPro. Now, in collecting the data, a focal animal sampling protocol was followed, which is when the camera operator follows the first dolphin that comes into view when they're in the water until they swim away, and a new dolphin is chosen to follow. Now, data for this study was used from 2017 to 2024, and across all of those videos sampled, 22 hours of GoPro video was combed through for these contact events. Now, the total population ranged from 18 to 23 individuals across those 7 years of study. And for the study, since the age of both our focal calves and the receivers were being considered for how contact patterns may change, we'll define those a little bit here. So adults pictured on that top left are older than 11 years old and have reached sexual maturity. Then we have subadults down on the left, which is 7 to 11 years and of similar size to adults, but not sexually mature yet. Then we have juveniles up on the top left below the adult, which is 3 to 7 years old, followed finally by calves. Now the pre-weaned calves are separated into 3 age categories. We have C1 for 1-year-olds that are 0 to 12 months, C2 for 2-year-olds that are 12 to 24 months, and C3 for 3-year-olds that are 24 to 36 months. Each of these on the right are pictured with an adult, so you can see approximate size differences. Next, we have our focal calves. So these are the 5 female focal calves for this study. We have Dory, Gizmo, Cammy, Sandy, and Trixie. And each of these calves were observed at all ages except for Cammy, who was only observed as a 1-year-old. Then we have our male focal calves. So these 6 males were Buzz, Rocky, Sean, Stan, Tank, and Woody. And all of them, again, were observed at all 3 age classes except for Woody, who was only observed as a C1, and Sean, who was not observed as a C3. Now, to log each contact event, the Behavioral Observation Research Interactive Software, aka Boris, much easier to say, was used to log each contact event, which included an initiator, which is the dolphin, in this case, the one of the focal calves that started the contact event, and the receiver, or the dolphin who was contacted by that initiator. And within each of these contact events, one of these 11 body parts was also recorded. Now, though contact exchanges and long bouts can often involve many body parts, only the first body part used to initiate contact was considered for this study. Additionally, the back and peduncle that we have circled here were often removed from statistical analysis due to lower sample sizes. So they just weren't used as much to initiate contact. Since this is a deep dive, I'll be talking a little bit about the stats, but not in too much detail to get you guys overwhelmed. So most of these variables listed to the left I've already introduced, except for the receiver being the mother of the initiating calf, which is simply a yes or no, it's the mother, it's not the mother. In each of these individual variables were tested with goodness of fit chi-square stats with equal ratio null hypothesis. So this means, for example, for calf ages, the null hypothesis is that the 3 pre-weaned age classes will initiate the same number of contacts, and we're testing to see if they differ from that. We also compared variables in pairs to fully understand calf initiate contacts. Now, I will not be talking about every one of these tests for my thesis, otherwise we'd be here for much longer than the 45 minutes allotted time. Next, let's talk about some of those results before talking about what they mean in the context of dolphin sociality. So in 22 hours of video, I documented almost 2,000 calf-initiated contacts. Overall, calves initiate a marginally different number of contacts as they age, and females initiate more contacts than males. We also have the screen time of the different calves for what they were observed on the right here, but the statistical analysis incorporating these observations is not included for this presentation as they're still finalizing that right now. We can see, though, that some interesting things that females were observed more at C1 than males, whereas males were observed more at C2, and it was closer to even as a C3 ages. Now, this diagram, we can see how calves of different age and sexes use different body parts. So the shading in the green indicate body parts used most in the darker and least in the lighter to white shades. But the asterisks indicate significant differences from expected values from that chi-square analysis. So the shading is not significant, it's just by percentage, but those asterisks are. So the double asterisks are more than expected, and the single asterisk is less than expected. So to focus you in a little bit on a lot of numbers, first with the C1 female calves, you can see that they use their pectoral fin less than expected, but they use their fluke more than expected. Now with that fluke, we can possibly, as they grow, we can see that females shift to using just their keel and genitals, and then just the genitals as they age. And now in contrast, or on the other hand, we have C1 and C3 males using their pectoral fin more than expected, while the older males, C2 and C3, use their fluke less than expected. A bit difference that we can see between both the ages and the sexes. Now next, in this figure, we can see the number of contacts initiated by each focal calf. So on the y-axis, we have the number of contacts initiated, and on the x-axis, we have each of the focal calf IDs. And then each of the bars represents one of the age classes. And for that reason, we only have the 8 calves that were documented in all 3 age classes, so 4 males and 4 females. But interestingly enough, we can already see some individual differences in amount of contacts they initiated. So Stan here on the right only initiated 1 contact as a C1 and then had over 100 initiated as a C3. You can also see that Sandy here kind of in the middle initiated a very large portion of the data set here, initiating over 150 contacts at each age. Focusing on those individuals even more, through the Fisher's exact tests, I found that individuals differed in the body parts that they used to initiate contact beyond the groupings of age and sex. So individuality was playing a role more so than those divisions of age and sex. Additionally, when each focal calf was analyzed separately, there was a significant association between age and body part used to initiate contact, except for Dory. So what this means, looking at this table that we can see here, Dory, who didn't have that association, did initiate more contact as she aged, as you can see in the total column on the right, but the proportion and ratio of which body part she used stayed relatively the same. In contrast, we can see with Stan here, when he was a C2, he used more of his fluke, which is the M, and then as a C3, used more of the pectoral fin to initiate contact. So starkly different ways that he's using the body parts to initiate contact, which is why, excuse me, we can see that significant difference. Next, I looked at patterns in calf initiation when they were contacting their mother. So only C1 calves contacted the mother more and others less than expected. The C2 calves showed the opposite pattern, contacting others more than their mother, and C3 calves did not have a distinction between contacting mom or others more. Now, for body parts specifically, calves use their genitals and keel more to contact their mothers, as we can see kind of here with Sandy, and which is in contrast to using the pectoral fin and rostrum more with non-mothers, which is the rostrum and the pectoral fin, as a little reminder. Now here, similar diagram to that first one, we have calves of both sexes using their body parts with receivers of both sexes. So on the left, we have same-sex partners, and on the right, we have the mixed-sex partners. Same with that first plot. The shadings indicate body parts used most in dark and least in lighter or white. And then the one part where we see diagonal lines in the B dolphin, it means that that body part was not used to initiate any contacts by females contacting males. As a reminder, those asterisks are that significant difference from expected. So double asterisk is more and single asterisk is less. Don't worry, I'm going to call your attention to the important stuff, so don't go too searching. With females contacting other females, we see them using the genitals, keel, and fluke more than expected, and then the pectoral and rostrum less than expected. Now, in the direct opposite, male calves showed the opposite pattern, using their pectoral and rostrum more, and those keel, genitals, and fluke less. Now, when these males or calves are using their pectoral fin with other males, it is primarily the older calves, C2 and C3, that are contacting other male peers. So when I say peers, I mean of similar age. These are C2, C3, and juveniles around. In fact, for both sexes, male and female initiating with males, which the latter of those females also use their pectoral fin more when initiating contact with males, most of the male receivers for both of these groups are younger males, so juveniles and calves of different ages, because these calves did not initiate contact with any subadult males and very rarely with the adult males. Now, that was quite a bit of information, so let's talk about what that really means in the context of dolphin sociality. So first, in a previous study on this RIMS population, it was found that male calves have more associates than female calves, likely contributing to males initiating more contacts with peers than with their mother. Another notable finding that we were just talking about from this study is that older male dolphins were seemingly avoided by the calves of this study. Now, it does follow previous studies on the Shark Bay bottlenose, Shark Bay, Australia bottlenose dolphin population that found calves avoid older males in an effort to prevent aggressive encounters. So it's a possibility that these dolphin calves are doing something similar. But it's hard to know if this is calf initiated or mothers steering their calves away from these older males. Speaking of mothers, many of the patterns seen in the calf contact behaviors may be attributed to influences from their mothers. This can range from differing in how they initiate pectoral fin contacts that can distinguish maternal styles to specific maternal behaviors like that herding and proximity maintenance behaviors that was mentioned earlier, and to certain swim orientations. For example, Cammie's mom Polly, pictured here down on the bottom right, occupies this typical calf role of the infant pair swim position very often with Cammie, and did so for several other calves prior to having her own. Now, typically, the infant position is thought of where the calf is below the mother, but this orientation puts the mom below the calf, as we can see on the diagram there on the left. Now, though some of the other mothers in this study also use this organization, I guess, of this position with their calves, Polly definitely used it way more than we see other mothers, and it may have influenced the body parts that Cami and some other calves use to initiate those contacts. So that genitals and keel and possibly the fluke that's closer, it contributes to higher levels of those body parts being used to initiate contact. Now, in addition to different mothers having different personalities, some mothers exert more controlling behaviors in the first year of their calf's life, which can limit who else a calf is able to initiate contact with and likely influence that only C1 calves initiate more with mom than with others. Now, these maternal behaviors can tie into the mother's personality, as you can see here with Carmela, who is one of our least observed dolphins in all video. So you can see her right here. That is Carmela way in the back. You barely see her. And this is her calf Stan as a C1. Now this clip is the only time, and then Carmela leaves, that we see this mother-calf pair on screen. And likely contributes to the fact that Stan only was observed initiating one contact as a C1. So it's not that he didn't initiate contacts necessarily, we just didn't see it because we didn't see them as a pair. Now, in talking about interacting with peers, the older C2 and C3 calves of this study seem to be starting to build their own social network with their peers. So again, those other C2, C3, and juvenile dolphins. As mentioned earlier, these older males initiate more contacts with peers than with their own mothers. In addition, these calves may be using the pectoral fin specifically more with their peers as a form of social bonding. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, pectoral fin contacts have been identified as being among bottlenose dolphins as being a form of social bonding. Now, while these types of contacts are used broadly amongst the dolphin group between different dyads, adult male dolphins specifically have been identified to have a stronger preference for same-sex, same-age rubbing partners. So any physical movement during that pectoral fin context than do adult females. Here we can see Stan as a C3 on the right and Tank as a C2 on the left, exchanging a bit of pectoral fin contacts back and forth. Given the results of this study and video clips such as this one, it seems that our male calves are starting that sex differentiation between the males and females very early in development before they're even weaned and have a stronger preference for their male peers than do the females in this group. Now, with individual differences, the various results identified of individual calves initiating contacts differently offer support to the idea that personalities are present and can be identified in pre-weaned calves in that early development. As an example that I didn't mention before, Buzz here used his pectoral fin in at least half of the contacts he initiated at each age class, which was higher than any other calf at any age except Gizmo as a C2. Now, in studies on adult bottlenose dolphins, including this population, personalities have been identified, some with long-term stability. But we have not seen personality assessments in calves because it's thought that they don't have set ones. But it seems there's definitely some individual differences there. Now, what are our big overall conclusions? So first, as calves age and mature, they contacted their mother less and their peers more, though this pattern was more distinct among males than females. Individual differences observed among the calves of this study suggest the early development of those distinct personalities prior to weaning from the mother for dolphins. These kinds of suggestions have been made previously on studies in dolphin calf behavior and continues to be supported by the results of this study. Overall, it seems that calves of this study are forming distinct patterns in their tactile exchanges with both mom and peers. Each of these dyadic interactions between two individuals builds relationships, and all the relationships build the society as a whole among the dolphins. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much for coming. Do you guys have any questions similar to these? All the males and one female, juveniles and calves, asking some very cheeky questions here at the end.
I like it. I almost feel like I can't steal the share screen, but alas, I must for a
Yes.
moment. Um, Let's see. That's a very nice ending slide. Thank you so much. Um, so before we get to questions, I just wanted to remind folks that this recording will be posted to the DCP website. It's a rare or a less common, perhaps, evening webinar, so I can't say if it'll get up tonight, but it will be up soon. And you can find all of the recordings on the DCP website, dolphincommunicationproject.org. Just look under the Knowledge Hub. And if you prefer, you can watch them directly on YouTube or Vimeo, whatever you prefer. This was a deep dive. So as you saw, Savanna didn't shy away from sharing some of those statistics and the numbers and the nitty-gritty with you. We also have dolphin lessons on recorded. Those are geared towards children, but I like to think of them as just for the young at heart, for everyone. And then we also have our podcast, The Dolphin Pod. Just like webinars, you can listen directly on the DCP website, or you can listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And then, of course, DCP is a nonprofit research and education group, so I would be remiss if I didn't remind you how you can support DCP. One way is to become a dolphin protector. Those are fun little kits. They come in electronic or physical versions. You can buy them online, and then they have facts and photos and a certificate. You can become a member. You can buy merchandise. You can join the director, Kathleen, on an eco tour in Roatan. You can go see the dolphins that Savanna talked about in this talk. And then one of our favorite sunscreen body care companies, Stream to See. They have a great code, and if you use that code, you can get 20% off for yourself, and then they donate 20% to DCP. So that coupon code is there. And then with all that, you could just stay in touch, utilize the resources on our website, check out our social media, share our posts, and all of that. So with that, we do have a few questions. We'll kind of go in reverse order maybe, and feel free to add more as we go. This is a comment that it was a very competent research study, clear communications, easy to understand the methodology, data, and your conclusion. Nice job explaining the chi-squared analysis and other statistics. Well done. So why not
Thank
to start
you.
with
Thank you
that?
very much.
I don't know why I meant to do that to you. That was silly of me.
Yeah.
Like you were in the room with me. Thank you for that, Kevin. And then we'll see. Let's see. One of the questions was early on, you
hmm
mentioned proximity maintenance behavior. And someone
hmm
asked if you could give some examples of what that means if for a dolphin.
Yeah. Yeah, so they can vary a bit. Some of it will just be small touches if a calf starts to swim away from the mother going on the other side and saying, "No, we're staying here with me." If the calf has gone a little further, maybe mom allowed it, and then she's like, "No, I'm done with this," comes back and collects the dolphin. So it's a bit of, I don't know if we know if there's any auditory communication to maintain those proximities, but small behaviors like that of just small touches and kind of keeping an eye on the calf, especially when it's in the echelon on the side, they can see a little bit more, and then even underneath, just small touches of like, "Hey, I'm still here," or vice versa, even from mom down. So small things like that.
Thank you. Um, Given the individuality that you found, do you think, and I think we all are aware that the
hmm
this study focused on the calves. So this, I
hmm
guess, is just sort of your opinion if you had a crystal ball. Like, do you
hmm
think these calves that you spent all this time studying, do you think that their individuality that they showed in these calf stages will hold when they are adults?
I mean that's the dream next study is to do a really long term from calves all the way to adulthood thing to see how these personalities play out and if things change. I think there's definitely, I think there'll be ups and downs with certain metrics, especially because as the with the males as they become juveniles, there's a lot of different social behaviors they participate in, play, and other things that might um, change how their contacts specifically exchange. And then, of course, when they get to adults and they're more interested in perhaps other females rather than each other, that might change some of those. So I think there's will certainly be certain aspects of maybe who is receiving contact change as dolphins age, but there I think the fact that they are individuals and that they'll each be a little bit different, and the fact that Sandy initiated a lot of contact partly because we see her a lot on the video. I think those kinds of personality metrics would stay if I had to think about it. And in those personality studies that have been done on adults and older dolphins, there is long-term stability, but there hasn't been very many that include, okay, from calf to adult, what stays. There's been a few mostly looking at do the associates stay the same? And some of
Mhm.
those do stay, but yeah, I think there's definitely still individuality as they grow, but how that expresses will change a little bit as they come into their social repertoire and state in the group.
Thank you. I'm going to go out of order on questions because I think this one
Hmm.
might segue better.
Hmm.
Someone asked about the same age. So you, for calves, where you
Hmm.
separated out by year within those
Hmm.
first 3 years of life, but then later, is it just like an adult and it doesn't matter if you're 15 or 30, or is it narrower in same age preferences for contact partners?
I believe in most of the studies that I've read, they group those age classes rather than doing a years by number, just because of availability of who you are able to collect data on. Because even with this group, you get a slightly more return for effort of what you're videoing because they're in within that area. But especially in wild populations, you don't know who you're going to get and you don't know exact ages. So having those group like in years, so having those groups makes it a little bit I think easier, but I think some of them I'd have to reread the papers, but I believe within like group differences aren't super prevalent. So as far as we've looked at right now, not too much within, especially once they get to adult, they're a little more stable. There might be some within juvenile. There might even be there might be some even within the calf ages as I've broken them down here. That's one thing that I've considered is especially in that first year, because with those paraswim positions and some other behaviors, they change a lot in that first month to 3 months. So these may not be perfect breakdowns, but they're based on more biological states, and so it's in where we're at right now and what we have with the data. But as we get more, then we can look at that more.
Yeah. That question made me think of like even in humans, like when you're young,
Hmm.
like a couple of years, like it makes such a big difference for a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old to play together. But then later in
Hmm.
life, 5 years is like, oh, we might as well be the same age.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I'm gonna ask, is it easy for you to share your screen again?
Yes.
And can we look at the slide you had with body part used by initiator? Uh,
Let's see.
X with same-sex receivers. Someone had a question about that, and I thought
Okay.
it would be nice to have it on screen again.
With the this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question was if you, that obvious sort of opposite with the
Hmm.
female, female, male, male, if you had any
Hmm.
idea why that might be.
Um, I think there's a couple of differences. One of the things that I didn't cover as much in this one is that females did interact with mom more. So some of those female-female interactions may be more contributing to this is how female calves interact with their mom than how female calves interact with other females. I did in the thesis pull those out separately of like, okay, when mom's not in, how do things change? And they didn't change too much. So some of the patterns held, some of them didn't. That might be because um, we sometimes see like allomaternal behavior. So other like aunts or other adult females will come in and kind of babysit in a sense. Um, so those females, when they interact with other females, it might be mom, and then other adult females that they treat similar to mom, then interacting with other young individuals, which makes sense for the other studies we have of male calves having more associates and them interacting more with peers, um, and that kind of thing. The other aspect could be, especially with someone like Sandy, who we see a lot of context for, she did not have any other calves to interact with, particularly females. And I don't even think she had very many young juvenile females to interact with.
Hmm.
So most of her contacts were with mom or other adult females, just with the timing that it happened. So there's definitely something to be said for who's available, which why it was considered a little bit, but there's only so much complexity you can add until your stats fall apart. But so
Yep.
I think that's definitely some of it. And because those males, again, are interacting more with their peers, we've seen in this study and previously that the way that calves interact with mom versus others is can be vastly different. And I think that's evidence in that kind of thing where males, if they're contacting other males, obviously doesn't include females, but the females who do interact more with mom than others, those patterns are showing how she interacts with mom. So yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Thank you. And I do, hopefully that was helpful to have the slide back up.
Hmm.
So a thank you to you, of course, Savannah, for your time, for sharing all that information with us. Thank you to everyone who listened live, everyone who submitted. I think we had some good questions
Hmm.
and lovely compliments this evening. So with that, we will say goodnight and thank you all very much. And we hope to see you at another DCP webinar in the future.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks, everyone.